Hey everyone, and welcome to the Imagine Church podcast, where our goal is to bridge the Sunday to Sunday gap. My name is John Harrison, and for this episode, I am joined by Nate and Abby Conroy, as well as Josh and Daphne Christensen. We're going to be talking about family and how COVID has affected our family this past year, changed dynamics and what that looks like. And so just want to point out, Josh and Daph, they're doing great. There's just some audio issues with the laptop, so it's easier if they're on separate floors of the house. But other than that, everything's going great. Nothing to worry about there. But how's everyone doing?
Doing really well, outside of the fact that we had to come up with an excuse to be on separate floors. So no, I'm just kidding. Audio issues are real.
Yeah. So like I said, we're just going to be talking about the past year, really, as we've been in this global pandemic. And for lots of us, it has changed our lives in a lot of different ways. And what we are specifically focusing on with this season is how it has changed our relationships. And so over this past year, how has COVID really affected your family life? What does that look like for you? How would you describe that? In just a couple sentences, maybe.
Well, for me, trying to do anything in only a couple of sentences feels almost impossible. In fact, I feel like I've used up one of my two right there. I think for me, when, like, let's just be honest, like this last year, we spent more time together as a family than we ever have before. Part of that was just a function of working at home. Part of that was a function of distance learning. We have two boys. They're 8 or 10 and 6, not 8. I don't know what that is, but 10 and 6. And so, it was good in a lot of ways and challenging in a lot of ways. But I guess the very first thing that comes to mind is just how much time, we spent together over the last, really what has been almost now 12 months.
Yeah, I would say for us, it's very similar, and I think of it really as an opportunity, and that we got the opportunity to spend a lot of time together with, like Josh said, working from home. And for me, someone that is a teacher and works from 7 to 4 every day, being able to spend all day at home with my wife and my daughter for an extended period of time is an opportunity. And it has its growing pains from time to time as we're now doing daycare and working at the same time as well. So full of opportunities. Some we did better with than others, and some took longer to adjust than others, but opportunities to just spend more time together.
I mean, I'll just add a little bit. I feel like it was kind of a roller coaster. I feel like even though it was almost 12 months, it feels like it was 12 different, we went through 12 different seasons of it. And I know in the beginning, it was like they were home all of a sudden, and we spent more time outside than we ever have in March and April and May, because normally they're in school. And so it's like just little blessings amongst the chaos.
Yeah, for sure. I thought of all the transitions as well, and just being able to figure that out together as a couple, how to navigate all of a sudden working from home together and childcare, and what that meant for us as a family. And so, I mean, the word Nate used was opportunity. It was a lot of opportunity to instantly problem solve together and figure it out. And being together every single day, there was no choice but to be in constant communication of what is working and what isn't, which was a good thing, and relying on each other's strengths. I think one of Nate's strengths is adaptability. That is not one of my strengths. And so relying on him to like reassure me that it's okay if our schedule is changing every 2 weeks or every other day, and being able to be assured that we were going to be okay.
Yeah. That's really a great segue into a conversation that I want to get into a little bit. You had talked about, looking at your life and all the different things. And it seemed like for a while, it seemed like things were changing every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, whatever. And there's a lot of decision making that needs to happen as a part of that process. And so talk to me just a little bit about what it was like, really like leading your families through this past year. We're still, you're still in the process of leading through this global pandemic. But what does that look like a little bit? I know it probably pertains a little more to Josh and Daff with their kids being a little older and at least understanding a little bit more of what's going on, as opposed to Ruthie, who probably just started seeing a bunch of people in masks all the time and was a little confused and probably a little scared. But beyond that, doesn't know nearly as much about what's been going on.
Mm-hmm.
I think for
guess,
us.
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay. I feel like for us, a lot of it was open communication because, like you said, our boys are older, that they were seeing it and experiencing it because of school. And I think we were letting them watch the news and stuff so that they were aware of what was going on to some degree. But just a constant open communication because it was changing so much. And I think our boys have a lot of our personalities in the sense of needing to know. Nate, stop laughing. Needing to know like what's happening, what's going on, or having a little anxiety about what's coming next. And so just having to do that communication part of it so that everybody was on the same page, and also just kind of calm isn't the right word, but I guess kind of calm about what was going to come next, that it wasn't like this huge scary thing, even though we were going through something unknown, that we were doing it together. And yes, everything looked drastically different very suddenly. And that it could be something scary, but it was, that we were doing this together and that there was this communication. So it wasn't suddenly like, all of a sudden you're no longer going to school, you're no longer going to church, you have to wear a mask. And so it wasn't all bombarded on them at once, and that they weren't finding out about it through other things.
Yeah. The only other thing that I would add in is just, and I think this has just been typically true of us in our relationship as husband and wife, and in the way that we've parented, and that we made mistakes in and through this past year as well. But the one thing that I just keep coming back to is how resilient I think people are, in that we found out that people are in the midst of this pandemic. Like, I never anticipated that it was going to be a year, and 12 months later, like, not much has changed, from where we were essentially middle of March in 2020. And so I really have loved the resiliency that I've seen our family have, and our boys, in particular. And, they just have rolled with, if they're in person, great. If it's distance learning, great. If it's some kind of hybrid, great. I think sometimes we as parents were the ones that panicked more than what the boys did. They just seemed to roll so easily with, whatever seemed to come their way. And so I thought that was just a really cool thing to discover in the midst of this, or be reminded of.
The two words that come to mind for me about just kind of leading our family and navigating work life as well, it would be like simplifying and like essential. And so being able to identify like what's essential in our life today. So whether that's our faith, which obviously is essential, whether that's our family during this season, like that's essential, that everything is okay. And then simplifying those things to be able to take the next step, and then readdressing what's essential, simplifying that, and kind of being able to take those two steps to kind of take it day by day, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. And I think when I think about that idea of like what's essential and how do we simplify it, I think all of us would be on the same page in saying that, you know, leading through this global pandemic, leading through everything that's gone on over the past year, one of the things that is absolutely essential for all of you is your relationships with each other. You know, there's a lot of stress and a lot of things that have been going on, whether it's with work or, you know, leading your kids through something that you have never even experienced yourself. Like there's all sorts of different factors that go into it. And then on top of that, there is still the task of maintaining a healthy relationship with your spouse, which there's so much to unpack and talk about with that topic that we're actually going to have a full episode dedicated just to that. But just a little bit here, I'd like to talk about like how has that looked for you over this past year? How have you navigated and maintained and really cared for your relationship with each other?
Well, it was like I mentioned earlier, somewhat of a learning curve, and we got a little bit of an extra curveball last March in that we had my brother-in-law living in our basement and my sister coming back from school. So our family, if you will, grew for a season as well, and we had 4 people working from home and 2 dogs and a 1-year-old or almost 2-year-old. So it was a lot of change. And like I said, there's some growing pains with that. And like we've kind of already said, open communication was important, and being able to laugh off the little things and be able to address the big things. And we read somewhere right at the beginning that you need to come up with a coworker to blame things on here. So Dwight was famous for leaving water glasses around the house and things like that. We were able to blame him for a lot of the little things, and just be able to kind of laugh those off. But just kind of be able to roll with the punches and have open communication and address the big things and laugh off the little ones.
Yeah, I think the huge advantage was the time together. I mean, we got to eat lunch as a family together for months, which would never have happened or been a possibility before. So just like enjoying and savoring that time and knowing like that was a huge blessing for us in that season. So the time was amazing together, but also then like recognizing and acknowledging what we both individually need as people. Like I'm very introverted, so having more people in my house was like a huge shift for me. And so recognizing when I needed time alone, and then recognizing he's more extroverted and needed time, you know, to hang out with other people, which was obviously not possible, but, you know, doing things with others via FaceTime or Zoom is what filled him up. And so recognizing those needs and making that happen for each other was a huge thing in strengthening our time, because then our time together is just more valuable in a season where you did have more time together than normal.
Yeah.
You guys, I feel like you guys are still in the newlywed stage or something, because I'm like, man, they're so peppy about this. Not that it wasn't great having all that extra time. I think that it, like you guys said, though, it was very much a learning curve, especially with different personalities. I am introverted and Josh is extroverted. And with everybody home, there was definitely times that as a couple, I'd be like, I need to be away from everybody. But if I didn't communicate it, it did, it was causing friction within us. And so just the communication again. And then also just trying to be intentional about carving out time for us, because, normally we would go on a date and someone would have our kids or we'd have a babysitter, and obviously those things weren't happening. And so different times where we would put the boys to bed and then we would eat dinner by going and, picking up dinner, and kind of carving out time for date night, or even just being intentional about watching a movie together. And I think just having those moments too, where it's like, okay, we need to, even though we are together all the time, we still have to be intentional with being together, and also intentional with being apart and having our time where, we need to rejuvenate.
Yeah, I think the word that kept coming to mind was quantity versus quality. And like everybody had this like incredible quantity of time, but that didn't mean that it was necessarily quality, right? And it's so picking out those ways to, like Daff was saying, make sure that we were staying connected as a couple. Shout out to Short and Tall and Rogers. I don't know how many times we went and got burgers from there. It did take out and brought it back and, ate it after we had put the boys to bed. But, I think when you find yourself in that position, when you're spending all of this time together, I think people automatically assume that it's going to make your relationship better. And I don't think that that's always the case. Like it takes work and intentionality and ensuring that it's not just a quantity, but the quality of that time you're spending in the way that you are intentionally, walking alongside the other person and trying to build into those relationships. I mean, I don't know how many games I became a kickball master playing against my two boys. I feel like during this pandemic, and part of that was because like sometimes I just knew that we had to get out of the house. Like Daff needed space and needed time, and that was the way that we were able to do that, at least early on, was going outside and playing and doing whatever. But I definitely think it's a learning curve for everybody. But that idea of that quality matters, right? It's not just the amount of time; it's what you do with that time that you have. That's really what matters most.
And again, I think of just like that word opportunity again, in that there were opportunities to just have like sacrificial love for each other as well. In that, like, I just think of, and again, Daff said a little bit, I wouldn't say we're in the newlywed, but I mean, we are a young family, and that we're still able to sometimes create some of those traditions. And so things like Abby and Ruthie coming golfing with me, that it's like normally I would probably just meet up with other guys and go golfing. And when that's not really an option, it's like, oh, they'll just walk the course with me while I go. I guess I can't think of as many sacrifices I made for them, but just be able to kind of do some of that stuff where it's like, normally I would go do this with other people, but we can actually do this as a family, and maybe this will start a tradition down the road as well.
And one of our things that we both look forward to now, which sounds pathetic, but honestly, just putting Ruthie in the stroller and going on walks has been a huge quality time thing for us, that we can talk about literally anything and everything. And for the most part, Ruthie is occupied. We sometimes have to make up little games along the way to keep her occupied, but things like that, I mean, we wouldn't have had the opportunity to walk every single day for months on end, and we were able to do that. And it was good to have the time to process with each other.
Yeah, I think a pretty consistent theme that I'd kind of picked up on throughout, and one that actually I've seen in my relationship with Linnea too over the past year. Obviously, we're engaged, so it definitely looks a lot different, and we don't live together. At least we're not always sharing the same space all the time, and so it is vastly different. I'm not going to act like it's not, but realizing that, like, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, like with all of our other like social outlets taken away, realizing how much space other people took up in our significant others' lives, and how much other people and other things were able to fill their bucket. Like for all of our examples, even with Linnea and I, there is one introvert and one extrovert. And generally, what would happen is, if I need my introvert time, I can just go be by myself. And if she really needed extrovert time, she could go find other people. She could go hang out with her friends, talk with someone on the phone, whatever, and get that extrovert time. But with some of those social outlets being taken away, it had kind of forced us, and it sounds like forced you guys as well a little bit, to realize and to figure out, okay, how can we provide those things for our significant other, when all of the other areas of life that really help and all of those different aspects have kind of been taken away. I think that there's definitely a huge area, huge opportunity for all of us to learn how to better love and serve our significant others in that way. So now for the fun part, we have talked about our immediate families and kids and leading your family, and everyone knows that sometimes extended family can be a little difficult. I mean, for some people, there's just like so much to manage. Like I know, as Linnea and I've been looking at and thinking about our future together, trying to figure out some of that has been really stressful. Of being like, okay, well, we've got like 4 Christmases and 4 Thanksgivings, and who are we with on this day, and whatever. Like all of that on its own, without a global pandemic, is hard enough to navigate. But if we're being honest, the addition of a global pandemic has certainly made it more stressful and more difficult to navigate. So just tell me a little bit about that. How has that looked like? What does that look like for you guys over the past year? How are some of the ways that you've been able to navigate that? Yeah, just anything and everything you can think of.
Josh, you want to talk about your in-laws?
I think that I just think about my own family. I'm the oldest of 9 kids, and so anytime that you have a mix of that many people, there just is going to be a vast difference of opinion in how things are handled, right? And that was clear in my family too. Like some people that were extremely cautious, other people who were less cautious. And so how that played into family dynamics, the word that I just kept reminding myself of over the last 12 months is just the word grace. I think it's really easy, and I think this is true not just in pandemic times, but when we play out scenarios, oftentimes we lead or our minds lead us to the worst possible outcomes, not the best possible outcomes of how conversations are going to go or what people are thinking. And I just keep reminding myself, like, to have grace towards people, to think the best, to not assume that I know exactly what it is that they're thinking. But it's been hard, right? Like there's some family members that we've barely seen. I think we've seen my mom, 3 times over the last year, and that would have been something that we would see her on a much more frequent basis, in pre-pandemic times. And there were moments that we tried to do Zoom, and Zoom is fine, but at some point it's not the same. Everybody gets zoomed out or Zoom fatigue, and so I think it's, like I said, to me, it just kept going back to that word, grace. And I think everybody needed to find grace for everyone else in the midst of this. And for people that thought different than I did in my family, it's like, cool, like how can I have grace in the way that I deal with them, and not make it a thing that turns sideways in the midst of what is already a challenging set of circumstances.
I'm going to steal Nate's word of opportunity. And I feel like spending time with family was a lot of creative opportunities, because Josh's family does have a higher risk, and so we weren't able to do what we normally do, like he said, or spend the holidays. But we did get together a couple times when we could be outside, and we'd spend the day out. I mean, our Thanksgiving dinner was actually an outside picnic. So, we just moved it a couple weeks early. And so just being creative with my family, I felt like we saw my family more often, but it was outdoors at football game or camping, or, just being creative with how we could see family. And just like Josh said, just the grace of it, because everyone feels differently, and some people have health issues, some people don't, and it made it challenging, especially like grandparents. The only time I've seen one of my grandmas is through the window of her care center, and some of our grandparents we haven't seen at all through the entire thing. So it's hard, but just trying to find those creative opportunities of Zoom calls or what we can do.
Yeah, I think it's finding those opportunities and savoring the opportunities that we do have, whether it's only virtually or to actually in person. I think as a younger family, navigating, like you said, John, like just all of the things, I mean, we've been married 5.5 years and we still don't have all the holiday and all those things figured out. But as a couple, like having to determine like what we thought was best for our family at the time of different things was definitely challenging, in terms of like, of course we want to see family, but what is best for everyone, or what are we going to do for our family, was hard. Like, and there's not a right or wrong, and we've never done this pandemic thing before. No one had, like, so that was something that I think built our relationship of like, we gotta figure these things out together. And that's kind of, where we land on different decisions, in terms of what we will and won't do. That was hard. Like, we've never done that, had to do anything like that, especially when other families or other family members are involved. And thankfully we are very close with both of our families, and we have gotten to see them. But there, I mean, like you said, Daff, there's grandparents that we haven't seen. Like Ruthie's gotten to color pictures, or just seeing her like being so used to FaceTime is like wonderful and heartbreaking at the same time. At the beginning, last March, I mean, she was barely talking, and for her to sign more grandma after being done on FaceTime was like heartbreaking, because that was her new normal. And I mean, kids are so resilient, like you said earlier, Josh, but as a parent, it was like, that's not the relationship we want you to have with grandma, is through a screen. And so I don't know, there's been definitely a lot of of challenges, but also a lot of savoring the time that we do get together.
We love our families. I mean, I really do feel like we're blessed to be very close to both of our families, where I know there's people that aren't. And so we, like I said, are really blessed with that. But like Abby said, it does make for challenging situations as well. And I think the same principles that apply with the spouse, as far as open communication and talking through certain elements or having some of the hard conversations you don't want to have, maybe even get exemplified more when you're dealing with extended family or your own extended family. And so, I mean, it is just a challenge, but to be able to have open communication and show grace to each other, and to a certain extent, I feel like with your extended family too, you have to be strategic in when you're going to be selfish for your immediate family as well. Like Abby was kind of saying, of we need to do what's best for us in this moment as well. And that might not always be what everybody wants or what everybody thinks, but we will make the decision and stick with it. And sometimes that's harder than others, and sometimes it's not what people want to hear, but being able to show grace in those moments as well.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So as we're wrapping up here, there are really, I suppose, two questions that I have. They kind of work together, and one is just how will this past year and what you've experienced change the way that you will continue to lead your families in the future? And the second is just what is some advice that you would give to anyone else that is listening to this podcast, whether they are, they're a spouse, or they're someone's son, someone's daughter, son-in-law, daughter-in-law. What's a piece of advice that you would give to them that you've learned for yourself over the past year?
I guess the slower pace of it, that it's okay to have a less busy schedule. I think that it'll be hard not to go back and just automatically fill it, and not even just with my own personal things, but kids sports and everybody's schedule just all of a sudden fills up our time. And maybe it's just more because I am introverted, but I definitely liked the slower pace of it and not having somewhere to be all the time. And just kind of, to piggyback off of Josh's words about just having grace, because, like Nate said, those decisions with their family, any type of decision, it's this decision you needed to make for your family. And I think that, sometimes it's quick to be like, well, that's not what I would do, but we have to give everybody grace and realize that, it's what we need to do for our family. That's the decision. And just having grace for people and thinking, okay, yeah, this is the decision that's right for their family, even if it's not what I agree with.
Yeah, I was thinking grace, and then just how to love each other well, whether that's your spouse or your kids or your extended family, of like, what does that look like in all different seasons. I think that has been something that I've learned a lot in this past season, that it can change. It can, like, don't get so stuck in the ways that you show love to others. Like, it's okay to be creative or see what they need that day and make it happen.
Yeah, I think I use this phrase a lot in coaching as well, of control the controllables, in that there's a lot that's outside of our control, whether that's looking at a global pandemic or politics or education or you name it. And so being able to control what you can control and being content with that as well, as far as, I don't know, don't get all that worked up about stuff that is out of your control, and showing grace to people that, like Daff said, maybe do it a different way or think about it a different way, or can be a polar opposite. And so showing grace and loving people, and what better way to do that than to do that for your family as well. So whether that's the interactions we have with Ruthie or the interactions I have with Abby, to be able to love her through those things, even if it's a decision that would be contrary, I guess, to what I would think, but be able to control what I can control and navigate through those together.
Yeah, I just keep thinking about how, in every crisis that happens, there also is tremendous opportunity that is created. And I think we're stronger than what we realize that we are, in our ability to navigate and to get through things. And I hope too that we just continue to be intentional in the way that we live our lives, that whether it's simplifying our lifestyle, whether it's in the way that we communicate or talk to the people that are around us, whether it has forced us to have better and more open lines of communication with others, whether it's grace that we just continue to live intentionally. And like I said, I just think like we're stronger than what we realize. Obviously faith ends up being a big part of all of our lives that are a part of this. And so, I just think God walks alongside us in every single one of these situations and moments. And he gives us, whatever it is that we need in those moments. Sometimes it's strength, sometimes it's grace, sometimes it's love, sometimes it's just the ability for us to be able to be alone. Whatever it is, like God walks alongside us in those moments. And I really am proud of, we didn't walk through this season perfectly, but I'm proud of the way that we were able to walk through, or have been able to walk through this season as a family and as a church. And my hope is that we're able to continue to be dependent on God and to be reminded about the lessons that we've learned over the last year.
Yeah, I think I would kind of close with, to reiterate kind of what Josh said and what I kind of opened with too, of I would say we're doing a disservice if we end up just going back to the way that we were, right? And that we can look at this global pandemic as an opportunity to be better and an opportunity to change, whether that's at a house level within your own family, whether that's at a church level, whether that's at a state or national level. I think we have an opportunity to be better and an opportunity to change. And now it's just utilizing that opportunity.
Yeah.
Seems like a great way to end it. So I want to say, first of all, thank you to all of you for coming on and for being a part of this. Not so much you, Josh, you've been here for all the other episodes, but everyone else who has been on. Want to say a huge thanks for taking time out of your day, or I suppose at this point your nights, to share some of what you've learned with myself and with anyone else who is watching this or listening to this. And just want to give a reminder for everyone that if you are seeing this and it is the first time, to follow our church, Imagine Church MN, on all of our different socials. It's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all those different platforms. And you can follow the podcast specifically. It is at anchor.fm /Imagine Church. That's where you can find our podcast website to see all the different areas that you can watch the podcast, you can listen to on any of your favorite apps. It's in Spotify. Pretty sure we're in Apple Music. Wherever you want to find it, we are more than likely there. Just want to say a huge thank you to everyone that has joined us for this episode. We hope that it has been encouraging and has been helpful to all of you. We hope that you continue to join us on this journey as we go through and talk about relationships in the midst of a global pandemic. And as always, our prayer is that God will continue to do immeasurably more in all of our lives. Hope to see you guys again next time.